beginning right about now. Hello, everyone. Hello, chat. Good evening, good morning, good whatever time of day you have. I have dark. I have my one light that's gonna be shining on my right side of face or left if maybe for some reason YouTube is mirroring the image for you. But let's get to know each other, chat. I was actually sneakily following what you've been doing so far, and I've been very closely monitoring where you're from. So I've definitely seen you people from Czechia. If you're from Canada, I've seen you all. I've seen you people from San Francisco as well. So very nice to see you, everyone. Yes, yes, yes. Czechia, I've noticed way before, way before. US, big love to everyone. We're gonna start very shortly, guys. We have quite a long stream ahead of us. Usually my streams are somewhat shorter. This one is gonna be probably a little bit more, just because I'm used to giving away some kind of place for people to ask questions in advance of the stream. I used to do it with just Patreons, but as it turns out, it was something just a little bit too ahead. And also, I just always felt that I was running short on questions here and there. So this time I decided to give the public option to ask questions in advance. It worked last time. I thought I'm going to do it again. But apparently, we are now crossing into territory where there's going to be a lot more questions. So we have a huge list of questions to go through that is pre-prepared. That does not mean that we're not going to be talking together, and we're still going to be talking about whatever you propose in chat and whatever I have on my mind. And first things first, while I'm giving American in Latvia. Whoa. Hello, welcome to Latvia. I'm really hoping you're having a good time because a lot of people are not. I mean, like, mostly because of the prices. Yes, the song was from Yermak. Yeah, Yermak Fitalisa Dike Pole. Thank you so much. Oh my God. Skanza Vengia. I butchered that a lot, but I will just, thank you so much. Yes, the first one was Yermak Dike Pole song, and the second one is a little bit more difficult because let me just post you the links so you have it, because that will be fair. I am now looking for the links because the other one, I believe it's called Sky, Nie Відступати, Nie Здаватись, but I am not sure if it has English, how do you say, like English name that you can Google, because obviously a lot of English speakers don't really have Cyrillic language search available for them. Yes. Okay, so this is the first link. This one will be for Sky. And then the Dike Pole, give me a second. And the second one is Dike Pole. Because you guys have been asking me so much that I start my stream with some really nice music, and I thought it would just fit so well to have some Ukrainian cool music, because Ukraine has seen a huge resurgence in what kind of music and cultural activities they're having inside of the country. For a longer time in history, in recent history, Ukraine was living pretty much in a shadow of what's happening inside Russia in a cultural aspect, and that's something that's quite available. I mean, I know a lot of Ukrainians that are very, that always kind of preserve the Ukrainian culture, which is fine and fair, but it's also fair to say that a big part of the Ukrainian society has been living in this very much Russia-dominated area. So a lot of Ukrainian music just did not have the ability to be recognized both within the country and worldwide. So this is my gift to you, and we're gonna do it pretty good. All right. Please write, guys. Don't forget to write where you're from. Like, I really enjoy reading it, and I really sometimes, there's some crazy places that you so on. Hello from Finland. Perkele. Fun fact about Finland. Did you know that the only other country that called Finland Suomi is actually Latvia? And in Latvia, we don't know why we do it. We just do. So there is no actual reason behind it. So what I was wanted to tell you, a lot of people have come to my channel, right? You know this whole drama with the new thumbnails, the fact that I went from the AI generated to the surprised face thumbnail. I know they're cringy, guys. I feel you so much, but they are attracting a lot of a lot of really good traction, and this helps me to support Ukraine better. And I'm really hopeful that you will be able to get past the cringy thumbnails. Believe me, when I take pictures of myself, like, listening to my own recordings is hard because I really hate my own voice, like many probably people. But also trying to look at myself when I take these pictures is also not something that I was really expecting. But it works. People really want to click. And I've basically talked with some other people, showed them my YouTube channel, like randomly people that they never heard that I had a YouTube channel or whatever. And they said, yeah, I would want to click that. So both anecdotal and data evidence shows that this thing works. And for the glory of Ukraine, let's try to get over that thumbnail factor. Just I'll promise you that the content will keep being really good. So you'll know that inside of package, whatever I'm going to put is going to be, to my best knowledge, honest and truthful. Yes, so a lot of people, as I was from when I started this channel, and I'm going to explain more, a lot of people are thinking that I am a Ukrainian. I am not, guys. I'm actually originally from Latvia, and I'm living in Denmark, so I'm very far from the front lines. I'm extremely far from the front lines. There is not even close what's happening to me. Like, I live in Denmark, and the only thing that might threaten me is that I might slip inside my shower and then hit my butt. That's the only kind of danger I am in. But my wife is Ukrainian. I've also extensively traveled Ukraine. I really love the country and I love the people. My biggest contact with Ukraine started when I went there right after the Maidan protests ended, and then when a lot of the Russian propaganda started saying that it's actually like all of the Ukrainians are fascists, and that on Maidan they killed people, like all of the propaganda stories. At that moment I said, like, this doesn't fit in what I remember when I was in Ukraine. So after that I went to Ukraine, I talked with the people. I understood at that point on in 2014 that whatever Russia is going for is completely untrue, and that's kind of started my internal kind of understanding of the perspective of the war and so on, because my sense of justice just didn't allow me, like, how can Russians just lie so blatantly when you can just go and ask and see it quite clearly? You can talk with the people and they will tell you everything, and yet we have so many people in the world that just don't care. And obviously when the hot war started, I tried to reach Mariupol. I was stopped on the way there in 2014. So I was able actually to reach Mariupol. It always was a war zone. But since then, I've met my wife in Ukraine. She was actually participating in the Maidan, which is a very nice piece of history. And she is very amazing. I love her very much. And moreover, I have very many... Oh my God, that sound off. I have a lot of really good friends in Ukraine. A lot of people that I can really call one of my best friends. They live in Ukraine. And obviously one of them I've told you about, if you watched all of the videos that I did, it was living actually in Bucha, and there's a whole story with him. But yes, so my family, obviously from my wife's side, are also living in Ukraine. So while I'm not a Ukrainian and I'm very far from the front lines, I do have friends and family that are in Ukraine, and some of them are even on the front lines, and some of them are in a very dangerous situations. Now, about my background, what I do, I am not a military analyst. I don't pretend to be. I am just a guy on the YouTube. So that's why I'm running this channel both basically as a blog. So You have me as a face, and then I talk you something like this. I don't claim that I'm the final instance of truth. You should always fact check me. The recent example with the missile is pretty much accurate to the point. I can be wrong. But we're going to talk about missile, like, don't worry, we're going to discuss that. But all in all, I have a background of being very analytical in my approach, and I can, just by the way how I'm working, how I studied, and so on, consume a lot of data and make sense of it. That's just what I do, both for my job and for myself. This allows me basically to consume a lot of information about Ukraine from different sources, verify those sources, and understand the data. And that's why I'm able to essentially decode things into easily digestible information. That's what I'm doing. If this helps me support Ukraine, super good. So that's why every like, every share, everything, I am super thankful for. I made this channel for just 2 people. So all the, what is it now? Almost 41,000 people. So it's all additional 41,000 people that decided to follow this channel. I don't know where you guys came from. I'm really happy that you're watching me. I'm not a professional. I've never done video. I've never done any kind of public speaking like to this scale, like speaking to over 40,000 subscribers and like hundreds of thousands of eyes. That's completely crazy for me. I'm just mind blown about it. That's the intro for me. I really hope that whenever you see someone saying like, I hope you stay safe and so on, you will just remind them that's like, no, this guy is pretty safe. This guy is just like chilling in Denmark. So be nice in community. I love you all. And I see you, everyone. Like I see Oakland, Germany. I see Austria, Pittsburgh. Guys, I see you all. Welcome to the chat. We're actually probably going to have some kind of activity just little by the line. But if you want to ask a question, please do tag me, because sometimes chat just scrolls a little bit too fast. And especially if you're reading, writing to someone else, just start your sentence with the, what is it called? The at sign, I guess. And then just tag me and we'll go forward. You spoke of bitch slapping Putin a few weeks ago. That's when I subbed. So low. Yes. I mean, I would be loving to bitch slap Putin. Like, to be honest, like this is one of the kind of like the ultimate goals of this channel. I would love to appear on the Russians or the Russian list of like banned people for entry. That would be very good. Okay, let's start with the questions, because I see already someone. A person with an O, with a name O and a dot in the middle, is asking, how is my mental health doing? I am doing quite well. My mental health was a little bit tough at the start of the war, but it's been very solid ever since, because it's very hard not to be very solid, because Ukrainian army just cannot stop winning. So why would I be feeling really bad? I do worry about a lot of my friends and family, but after my family members were in occupation under Russians, to be honest, after that, I don't feel anything comes even close to that. Any good news from the front today? Honest talk. Today, completely didn't have time to do anything. We were trying to unpack. You see, I'm having more stuff on my... Oh my God, I don't even know how it's called. Like, it's called Rumdela. I'm butchering this, or Rumdela or something like this. Basically, it's just like shelves. Like you see on my shelves, a lot more stuff appearing. We actually have been doing a lot of unpacking, because next week some of our friends are coming over, and we will see. But as far as I've heard from like yesterday's reports, when I was following up on videos and so on, the situation is pretty much didn't change. Russia is looking to go into the how do we say, into political gains around Bakhmut. The troop movements from Kherson, as far as I've heard, they've been split. So some of them went north towards the Svatova line. Some of them are now supplementing the Avdiivka-Bakhmut direction. So I think all in all, we definitely see that Russia wants to secure Luhansk region and potentially capture some additional, political goals, like we've captured Bakhmut, wow, or we captured Avdiivka, wow, it's a propaganda victory because it doesn't change the war. It's just like one town. Like they still need to capture the rest of Ukraine if they want to stop. But they're going for some political goals. Where Ukraine is going to make their moves, it's still a little bit of a secret. I have some hints from the people that I have on the front lines, but last time, whenever they were speaking, it's actually not much has been happening. The actual action, the actual activities have usually started when they did not speak to me. So it's like, so far, basically people are not on the silent mode with me, which is okay. Has UA demined the dam on the Dnipro River? That is a very good question. I cannot answer it right now. I don't know. I know basically what happened is the section of the bridge that they dropped was the closest to Ukrainian side, so they couldn't really access the whole way along the Dnipro River. But potentially they did some kind of scouting and at least estimations. I would really hope that they did. That would be a priority. But I have not heard or seen any news about it. But again, I would not worry about it because it was big boogeyman. Russia just was again playing at our nerves, trying to spread the misinformation. They are not going to blow up the dam. You are considered a professional news source and give us the free word insight. I am not a professional news source. You should not consider me a professional news source. I'm a guy on YouTube. Regarding the name of the shelves, if this is IKEA stuff, don't try to spell it correctly. It's could someone Tulhu. No, this is not IKEA. This is from Yusk. It's another company, but they're competing essentially. You mentioned once that you noticed a difference between Ukrainians and Russians. What is the difference? I mean, it's what's the context for it? Because there is a lot of differences. What do you mean, Al Anderson? Can you clarify what kind of difference? Like, because there's way too many to list. Like, it would be a broad question. I could write a whole essay on this. Do you think Kherson Racoon will be exchanged for a POW? I saw very sincere video of a Russian expression. Yeah, I mean, Kherson Racoon is fine and all. I wish they would rather keep the raccoon and give back the children they stole. Which country are you from? I'm originally Latvian, but I live in Denmark. Cheryl Waitley? I hope I'm pronouncing it correct. Cheryl, thank you so much. Yes, I am from Latvia. All right. Can Ukraine rebuild their defense industry like the new drone tanks rocket production? Yes. Ukraine is already, like there has been just recently another new talks for Ukraine essentially to start building new manufacturing of the weapons that, for example, US is not willing to give Ukraine. And we're going to talk about this again later on, so you can keep all the questions about that. Or you can ask him and then I'll just speculate right away. But Ukraine is definitely planning to build additional facilities. We already know that the countries have production started to supply Ukraine with some of the weapons that they are already giving and spare parts especially. But it seems that they are planning, it was Ukraine plus 6 EU members, or no, not EU, Ukraine plus 6 NATO members that were agreeing on building weapons manufacturings together. And I believe it was 4 that was open about it. It was Poland, Czechia, and some other countries. And there was like 2 that were classified that didn't want to say who they were. Any thoughts on US change in Congress control? I am really scared about our US aid to Ukraine in the war isn't one but beyond by the end of 2023. Don't worry about it. I will more talk about the negotiations, the push for negotiations to Ukraine. But the short answer, don't worry about it. Everything is going to be fine. Yes. How do you sustain yourself in Denmark? Are you going to stay? Yeah, I've been living in Denmark for over 9 years. I have a very nice job, career. That's why I, for example, like I am able to donate over 50%, like sometimes over 50, but most times 50% of any profits that I get from YouTube to Ukrainian army, because I am able to also work, sustain my life, my house, my wife, and so on, because we have I have a good career. I have a very good job. I love it. The context in particular, I think you talked about it on the line communications. Sorry, I can't remember. But okay, let's talk about. I think sometimes I talked about the different tactics that Russians and Ukrainians have been performing. Right, for example, the Ukrainian army that's being a little bit more focused on the being locally led, whereas Russian is very much top-down structure, whereas Ukrainian is a little bit loose and can adapt. There's also a lot of understanding about how this war is fought. You know that Ukrainians are fighting this for their own country rather than Russians. Well, I don't even know what Russians are fighting this for. So again, I need a context to answer. Maybe ask a new question and then give context that you would like to hear. I have been concerned about Ukrainian civilians, as in how people are coping with power outage, mental health, and physical care and present allies. Physical care, oh my God, I'm swallowing words. Physical health, I would not worry as much. I think Ukrainians are, firstly, it's already 9 months in their war. Ukrainians have shown that they have the capabilities to survive. Mental health is a bigger issue. I think a lot of Ukrainian society still does not understand just how big of a trauma it is, especially because in Ukrainian society, mental health is not a well kind of open topic for people to speak about. So for them, seeking mental health professional to help deal with any kind of trauma or even recognize that there's a trauma, it's very, very hard for Ukrainians. A lot of them are essentially in denial. And they will be, but it's going to cause a lot of problems in the future. But physically, they are doing okay. They're doing the best as they can. What do you think about pro-Russian Western media outlets? Seems more people are supporting Russia. I'm not sure why you think more people are supporting Russia. They do pay a lot of trolls to be very open and very public. They are using a lot of those, and there is a lot of useful idiots that people listen to, and because their nonsense is such a big and loud nonsense, they are like, people are commenting and sharing their nonsense instead of listening to people that actually matter. I don't think that there is a lot of people supporting Russia. Worst case estimates in some countries was like 20% max, like that's like max. Thomas, thanks for 20 kronas. Korunas? I don't know. Which one is in Czechia? Wonderful channel, sir. Much respect for your work. Thanks. I wish I would not have this channel. Could you put questions on the screen as you answer them? It's not always easy to follow the topic. Oh, shit. Sorry, I always forget. Please remind me next time when I should read the question. I should read the question at all times. Will Ukraine's energy infrastructure be sustainable if more Russian missiles attack over winter? Yes and no, right? Ukraine is a nuclear power, so I mean, in a sense of like a civil atom. So they still have energy production. So it's all about like the infrastructure, and Ukraine is trying to reinforce it. We know that the Western allies are also supplying more spare parts and supplying more anti-air missile systems. So I would think that, yes, I think firstly, Russians are slowly but surely running out of missiles. But secondly, I think Ukraine will be able to get through the winter without going dark completely. Would this war end faster if Ukraine had ATACMS? Yes. Do you think Ukraine could run low on soldiers? I hear it sometimes in German media that I never in other media. No, that's completely wrong. For a longer time, Ukraine doesn't have problems with the soldiers. Like, there's still people that want to join Ukrainian armed forces. The problem is never the soldiers. The problem is the equipment. Send more weapons. Do you know if Cyprus will swap its Russian tanks? And it had been written by some media. Yes, the deal, as far as I've heard, has begun to operate. So I'm not sure when it's going to be completed, done, or when they're going to be sent. But I've heard, yes, that Cyprus will send their. I believe it was APCs. I don't believe it was tanks. I should have said you are a professional YouTuber and give you views and analyze what's happening in Ukraine, not a news source. Sorry, it was me wrote. No worries, no worries. It's fine. Thanks for staying with me. Do you watch Ben Hodges' video on interviews? Yes. He's one of the Ukraine's biggest supporters and he's super smart dude. Agreed. More importantly, about Ben Hodges. Very often, especially at the start of the war, a lot of people criticized Ben Hodges, saying that, this guy is very optimistic, super optimistic, because he's pretty much foremost from day one. Well, okay, not day one, but when the war more or less stabilized, when kind of new evaluation of what Ukrainian forces are and what Russian forces are, he was one of the first that came out and said that Ukraine will be able to push Russia to 23rd February border by the end of the year. And they will be able to retake Crimea by essentially summer next year. And as much as optimistic that sounds, Ukraine is very much on a trajectory on pretty much achieving almost that. There is still North Luhansk left, and there is still Melitopol area left. And then Ukraine basically is back to 23rd February borders. It's just two major pushes left. Is it possible to do within 1 month? Probably, yeah, maybe just one of them. But then again, even if it's just going to be one of their directions that Ukraine will close until the end, that is a very accurate prediction, earlier than anyone. So I think, while might he be a little bit optimistic, he was very much spot on his analysis. And he's a retired general, so I think he knows way more than I do about how armies are run and how to evaluate them. So Ben Hodges, really smart guy, would recommend so much. Watch him if you get a chance. There is a rumor that US Pentagon is not sending ATACMS because it's a bigger warhead with more radar signatures, so easier. Yeah, bullshit. Complete bullshit. Complete bullshit. It's okay. So why would you not try to help Ukraine, right? So the answer is this weapon might be spotted by the other missile systems. I mean, fair, but why not give it anyway? It's not that it's being sent and then it shows that it's not effective and then they don't send it anymore. Like, for example, which happened with a lot of drones early on, these smaller drones, like what was it called? The Switchblades, the small ones. They showed to be very susceptible to the Russian electronic warfare, right? It's not the same. They didn't even send and try them out. So it's a flat-out ban on sending ATACMS. So it's not the same. So I'm calling bullshit on the fact that it's not that it's just not as good as Gimler's. Therapy, range therapy, sends downrange. Yes. Do you think population in Russia really believe that only 6,000 soldiers have died, reported by the Ministry of Defense of Russia? Whatever Russia believes or don't believes, you can really listen to Vlad Vexler's channel. Vlad Vexler is a lot better at explaining what's the inside of heads of the Russians. Firstly, because he was in a Russian society, he talks a lot more with Russians. I only kind of know Russian culture. And I'm also not I don't have a psychology degree to analyze it. But from the cultural perspective and the layman perspective, I think that they might, because they do believe that Nazis are in Ukraine, right? Right? There is a lot of people that are still saying, yes, and NATO is manipulating Ukraine from the shadows. There's just recently, we watched some kind of a propaganda debunking video from the Russian side. And it was a guy standing with a poster saying, yes, go our warriors, save us from this NATO-controlled Nazi threat. So, yeah, I am pretty sure there are people that do believe this. Could a solution to end the war be if Ukraine remains neutral? No. Do you hear the nuclear power plant was hit again? I know Ukraine wouldn't do it, but Russia blamed the Ukraine like always. Yeah, I've heard it was explosions near the Zaporizhia power plant, and it's gonna be, I don't know. Maybe it was a stray missile. It's hard to know. Maybe Russians were again trying to shoot from around missile. Maybe how do you say, the European, not the European, but the world, like this nuclear agency just was not around for that day. So the Russians just decided, hey, it's a good time to shoot. And then Ukrainians retaliated. What do you think about the Dutch government? They will only give Ukraine 0.8 billion of military help, while more than 30 billion of paid to Russia for gas, oil, and coal since February 24th. I think thanks. Anything helps. We definitely know, like, we want the world to be ideal, right? I want the countries to be moral, especially European countries, right? Because we in Europe have this morals above values. Like we say, the European Union is built on values and morals and so on, and we talk about it so loud. So when the test for these morals finally comes, we are like, well, but we still need to trade and so on. So I understand the threat that the gas was bought from Russia, and we did pay a lot of money. But I think the decisions of stopping buying gas is what's important. We need to understand that the fact that we are now coming into winter with almost 100% in many places filled capacity of the gas storages, we are in a very strong position for Russia not to have leverage during this period of time. Imagine a situation that countries, like every country, is going to start principle and say, okay, European country, we give away buying Russian gas. We stop all the contracts. Russia does not get 13 billion. Cool. But then this winter comes, and importantly, Russia would not stop, because Russia is running very much. They have a lot of money. They still have enough money. If they're going to stop getting all the income, they still have enough money to run this for at least a year or forward. But imagine this. So if we would come this winter, but our storage inside of our gas facilities would be 6%, would that help the case of Europeans or and Ukrainians, or will it be worse for Ukraine if Europe would be in this vulnerable situations? And then all of those paid parties and shills, like the far right and far left of Germany, for example, the AfD and Linke, right? Do you think their voices would not be heard by that point? So I understand their argument. However, I believe the fact that European Union is becoming more independent from Russia, and we see that with the more and more aggressive rhetoric that is coming from the European Union. As European Union is decoupling from Russia, we see that the rhetoric of the European Union is becoming stronger. So you listen right now what my friend Mr. Scholz said, and I'm calling him my friend because like a lot of months I've been giving him shit for his positions. But now Mr. Olaf Scholz is saying some very, very strong words towards Russia, and actions are following him. So yes and no. I would want obviously everything to be decoupled right away, but it's a hard question to just answer on that statement alone. Okay, butcher. Thanks for €2, but the butcher name, Vida Standla. Vida Standla. Okay, I'm hoping I didn't butcher too much. What is your assessment regarding preparedness for winter between Russian and Ukrainian Russian and US Army? I think US Army is a lot more prepared for winter than Russian Army is. Will Russian Army suffer more due to the lack of supplies and winter equipment? Yes, definitely more than US Army. Okay. I know that you probably meant the Ukrainian Army. Yes, absolutely. Ukraine is infinitely better supplied. Moreover, this is going to be what I'm going to be talking about in my next video about the fact, because we see that the first snow has come and people are noticing this. So now the first videos of how Russian troops are having it on the front lines is coming out, and it's not looking good for the Russians. So I do believe that they will really struggle. They will really struggle. Thanks a lot for you. Hey Lisa, thanks for $10. I see you every time, and thank you so much for the strong support. I really noticed that. Yes. Will the winter weather cause severe Sean Griffin asks, will the winter weather cause severe problems for the Russian as they don't have winter clothes? I just answered that. Martin Anderson, will Latvia demand Pichorsky back? Pichorsky? What is Pichorsky? Give me a second. Pichorsky. I'm a bad Latvian probably because not Pichorsky. I didn't know that Pichorsky was part of Latvia. There was a like the dispute of Latvia had was, I'm not sure if this was Pichorsky district. The dispute Latvia had with Russia is with the district that's called in Russian Putalova, and in Latvian it's called Abrene. And Abrene was basically a big tragedy for a lot of Latvians because no one really wanted to give it away. But they had to do it anyway because we wanted to be friends with Russia and we were a small country, not even part of Europe. Truth is shredding. Thanks for £5. Okay. Hey, so hey, elsker det arbejde af stål over den danske stemme og meget hårdt stillet med russisk propaganda og din store kærlighed for Ukraine. Jeg har solgt mit liv for at støtte 100. Wow. Thanks. Thanks for the huge support, Quist84. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I really appreciate Danish support has been outstanding. The only kind of sadness that I had for the Danish support that was here in Denmark is the fact that the biggest campaign Denmark made was like, you know, when they sent with the mobile and everything, was the fact that it was run by the Red Cross. And a lot of that money didn't made it to Ukraine. And Red Cross is also using some of that money right now, for example. Well, okay, I don't have any proof. But basically, Red Cross is not very active in Ukraine, and it has been not doing a very good job in supporting Ukraine. Let's put it this way. That was the only kind of sad thing. But there was many other good campaigns, such as campaign that was run by TV2 and Dance Radio. So obviously my Danish is terrible, so sorry for reading that. I just completed my PD3 test. So we'll see how it went. I don't even know the grade yet. Please share links to other good creators on YouTube. Thomas Marnie, on my channel, on the front page, when you open it, there is a good channels to follow the whole line. I'm always adding new ones. So whenever people leave comments under my videos and so on, I'm reading almost every single comment under every single video. So how will the UK-Belarus wall? Okay, this is a time for, today is a stream for misspelled abbreviations. So Mark Garcia is asking, how useful will the UK-Belarus wall be? So I would guess UA-Belarus. So UA-Belarus wall is there just to delay things, right? Ukraine has made a very strong commitment to not shoot at the territory of Belarus. So they're going to wait until Belarusians essentially come in. So the wall is there with the diggings and ditches for Belarus essentially to slow down. So their armies, Russian or Belarusian armies, they would slow down and they would be targeted by the Ukrainian artillery. That is the only reason there is the wall or any kind of additional. So will they do the job? They will give early announcement that they're coming. And secondly, there will be a delay for them to get targeted by artillery. So I think they will do the job that they're planned for. Okay, give me a second. Shit. Enric Martinez, thanks so much for 10 euros. Carla Karkoran, I'm sorry. Sorry, Carla, if I'm mispronouncing everything. I mean, like, I'm really have bad with words. You know that. Everyone watching me always leave, like, you always notice that when people leave under my videos saying, oh, you misspelled this or you're missing this word. Yes, I'm struggling with English sometimes. Thanks for the 19 bucks, 20 bucks. I appreciate it. Thanks for all you're doing. I spread support as much as I can. Anyhow, hoping you even more air defense assets will arrive soon. Raven7, thanks for £9. I love also reading every single one of your comments. I know how much you've supported Raven7, so I know. I feel you all, and thank you so much for following this. Okay, Let's see. There was a question about Crimea. Can you? Okay, Sonso asks, can you explain the Crimean ethnic situation? We've been told that the Crimeans are mainly ethnic Russians who don't want to be in Ukraine. What percent are really Ukrainians? Firstly, that argument doesn't matter because nowhere in the world that someone says that if there is some kind of minority living in some part of the country, that part of the country has the right to secede to some other part of the country. That is just without going into the fact that Russia invaded and annexed this illegally. So it's completely irrelevant how much minority or majority of population in there. Secondly, Crimea was an autonomous region that was run by the local population. And first and foremost, Crimea is a home to Crimean Tatars. That is an actual minority that Crimea was for. The Russians came in there during the Soviet times because the Soviet regime decided that it's pretty cool if we just take out people from this part of the world and just move them somewhere else. Like, for example, they tried to do with Kherson. And then the new Russians came in. So it has a very long and difficult history. But the fact is fact, like that there's right now, it was an autonomous region within Ukraine. So it's completely irrelevant how much or why there are Ukrainian and Russian speakers in there. On that said, was there a lot of people that spoke mostly Russian? Yes. That is the answer to the question. But it stands no ground on what kind of who the Crimea should be, which country should the Crimea be part of? It's Ukraine. That is a very easy and clean question to answer. I'm confused though. They are Satanists now with war mosquitoes, not Nazis anymore. Yes. The answer is yes. It's always everything. It's always everything and at once. What's your thoughts about NATO response to accident in Poland? There has been, Mantas Baranauskas is asking, what's your thoughts about NATO response to accident in Poland? We're still going to be talking a little bit about the accident, but the crux is people have made a lot of conspiracy theories, but I have not seen evidence to the contrary. We know that Ukrainian staff has been able to access. There has been reports that Ukrainian analysts came into the crash site. They've been analyzing, and then a couple of days passed, and we don't see again Ukraine saying, "Oh, you've been lied to." So there's been a lot of conspiracy and people like putting together a lot of things from the air, but there is no ground on denying that. US and NATO came in first, but we need to understand that AVAX, the planes that are tracking all of the missiles, it's belonging to US. So most probably they saw some trajectories and they just reported to Biden. That's why he came out first. With that said, can there be a situation that I'm wrong and it's actually a conspiracy? Potentially, yes. But if all parties, let's put it this way, game theory time. So imagine a situation. So you're Ukraine, and then you can either stand in this situation and oppose until like the final truth is found, what was the explosion, and you check every single version, or you see what your biggest supporters and parties that are your friends are saying, and then you say, well, maybe we'll find the truth a little bit later with the proper investigation, but we agree that you take this position, and it's a stupid thing to like a stupid hill to die on. Why would Ukraine do that? So it does not make sense for Ukraine to argue against the position of the NATO. So I don't have any problem with that. Let's see. Level 70 asks, and thank you for $28. What should the EU do about Hungary, which keeps blocking aid for Ukraine? Love your work, by the way. Thank you so much. Hungary is a pain. I'm a very much pro-democratic guy, right? I don't believe that world can be ideal. I don't believe that unitary goodness is possible. I believe that democracy is the best thing we have right now in the world, and that's the thing that is worth protecting. I believe Hungary is falling down the rabbit hole that Putin is Putin's Russia went, and I believe that if we just don't do nothing, then we're going to have a democratic, authoritarian power inside of Europe that is sabotaging both NATO and European Union. So I think they should be suspended from participation in NATO and EU until the rule of law and democratic values in reality, not on paper, come back to Hungary. With all my love to Hungarian people, there's very, very, very many Hungarians that I know and love in my also personal circle, but we need to make a stance, or otherwise we're going to have an authoritarian leader that's going to sabotage the life for the whole continent. All right. Kellen Dunn asks, do you believe EU now understands that Ukraine must win? Your feelings about Italy PM Meloni? I feel very good about Italy's Premier Minister Meloni. I think she's great. She has been saying things I was very surprised. I think it was on G20. She made a speech basically stating and mirroring the position of a Finnish Prime Minister. I think she has huge balls. That's my stance on Meloni. She is pretty amazing for essentially representing the political ideology that I'm not completely supporting. But then again, let's solve problem one by one. Italy has their own problems to solve. It's not for me to say which parties work or don't work for Italy. Maybe just not Sarkozy, but who was it? Was it Salvini? No, it wasn't Salvini. Jesus Christ. All right, the friend of Putin. Level 17. What should the EU do about? Okay, just right. Wasn't Maidan US-led proxy coup? No. Chris Luna is obvious troll, and he is getting banned. So wasn't a Maidan a US-led coup? No. Coup. Sorry, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. Is there a lot of support for Russia in the Baltic states? Artur Reki says it's small, but they're indeed there. There's a lot of Russian population that stayed after the fall of the Soviet Union. They have, like, the problem of the Russians is because of their like Russians abroad and Russian nation as well. This is what Ukraine was also experiencing to a lesser extent, is that they don't want to integrate. And then we've seen this also in the German society, right? Because Russian narrative is that Russia is great and it's an amazing, great country, and they have an amazing, great history. They're descendants of the victors of the Second World War that stopped Nazism. And they don't feel obliged to follow the laws and cultural requirements and integrate into the countries they've been part of. Don't get me wrong, it's not all Russians, but many of them are. And especially this was notorious in Latvia. So there was a lot of core of Russians that thought that Latvia should not have independence, that it's not Latvian land, that is Baltics as well. And that it's just a matter of time until Russia is coming back to take them over. So they are still there. They didn't want to, for example, learn the language of the countries that they're living in for like 40, 50 years that they live in those countries. And they on purpose didn't want to, for example, integrate and stay in those weird statuses that, for example, Estonia and Latvia has, such as non-citizen of the states. That is a huge topic. Why is it happening like this? But the point is, Russia has a lot of pride, and Russians have a lot of pride. They still have not reflected on themselves, on what they're doing is wrong. They think if it's Russia that's doing it, it's right and correct. And they are believing everything. They're just eating all of the shit that propaganda channels are throwing at them. Moreover, in Latvia, the propaganda channels have been now banned on the public television, so they cannot even watch it. Right now, there is only, like, they opened Latvia, for example, they opened the opposition channel that escaped Russia and now is showing. But Russians don't watch it. Russians are going on the internet, they're buying some kind of third-party shady subscriptions just to go back and watch the Russian propaganda. So they're there. Your feelings about Rishi Sunak? I was pleasantly surprised he visited Kyiv so quickly. Me too, actually. I was thinking that after the situation with the economy in UK, that Rishi would focus a lot more on the internal problems, to stabilize the country. But no, he was right away. I think that it's because in Ukraine there was a lot of perspective when they were in a runoff with Liz Truss, that Sunak was kind of less favorable candidate for Ukraine, and because Liz Truss was so openly hostile to Russia in her rhetoric, and Ukrainians, we need to understand, they don't have a deep understanding of European politics at all. They see it very much on the surface. So, for example, whenever someone from the, far-right Eurosceptic party starts saying that, hey, we should stop sending Ukraine weapons, they take it very seriously because they think it's not a fringe group that has no power at all in European Union, and they are very, very naive on that. So I was very surprised. So far Rishi has been a very interesting candidate. Again, I obviously need to look more at what he does, but I don't think he was a bad candidate. Better than Corbyn. I know Corbyn doesn't run, but don't worry. Sarunas, in regards to the occupying from Russia, in the long run they have to know. They saw that Russia is not a reliable partner. It's not blackmail. It's not just morals anymore, but practical matters. Yes, and I think they do get it. I think slowly their understanding is coming to European leaders that there is not going to be any more business as usual until Russia changes. Can you explain if Crimeans are Ukrainians or Russians? Oh, it's the same guy that already asked this question once. I already explained this. I noticed UA is getting better at shooting. UA is getting better at shooting rude missiles, drones. Your thoughts on current air defense systems? I wish there would be more of it, because we are able, Ukraine is able to protect some of the population centers, but far from all of them. And it's definitely nice that they're having, Ukraine is having these systems, but we need to understand that a lot of this is based on the old Soviet equipment, and that one, there is not a lot of it in the world. So Ukraine needs to rebuild their air defense system based on the new standards that, for example, the new missiles they would be able to import and then resupply. S-300 missile systems and number of missiles in Ukraine is limited. Maybe it's quite large, but it's still limited. So at some point there will start to appear holes inside of the system, unless the Western partners step up. And I really hope they will. Okay. Yes. Kellen Dunn, Crimea or Luhansk, Zaporizhia Oblast come home first? Well, Crimea cannot be done before Zaporizhia. I don't believe it's really possible. And I already talked in my last video that I think it's going to be Crimea, just because the rule of thumb for this warfare so far is that Ukraine went after where logistics have been the weakest point in the Russian defense. And if you look at the map right now, you see that logistics are the weakest in the northern Luhansk area, yes, but also quite weak in Crimea. They're all dependent on a Kerch bridge. And after that, it's going to be really bad. So I do believe Crimea is going to come before Luhansk and Donetsk. But the full picture is obviously is only known to General Valery Zaluzhny. All right, guys, I've answered a lot of the questions from the chat. Let's jump to some of the questions that I have here on the side for people that asked before the stream. So let's go. So Cindy Thompson is asking, how are you doing? Please stay safe. As I explained, I'm not Ukrainian. I'm not Ukrainian and I'm not in any danger. Helen Dunn is asking, are you disappointed with Israel's lack of support for Ukraine? I'm pissed off with US dollars go to Israel. Israel is supporting Russia. Israel is supporting Ukraine. They just don't announce it. There has been Israeli not weapons, but like armored vehicles appearing on the battlefronts, on the battle lines in Ukraine, and they were never announced. Israel is part of the what is it called, the Ramstein meeting group, where they agree on the weapon supplies. I believe Israel is just not announcing their weapon supplies because of their fragile relationships with Russia. So they will do it under the table. Maybe. So don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged. Israel is trying to support Ukraine. Christina S. is asking, why won't President Biden declare Russia a terrorist state? The reason given from the press secretary are, in my opinion, weak and lack a backbone of and cater to coddling Russia. But something just seems off too. Biden won't visit Kyiv either. Something isn't adding up for me, and I don't know what or why. So Biden not visiting Kyiv is very easy, because he's a president of the United States. United States security, I believe the Biden is not responsible for his own security. It's not like he cannot make his decisions fully on where he can and cannot go. And he cannot just and security standards and protocols will probably not allow him to just go into the war zone. I think it's literally will be against any kind of security measures that are in US, because they are very strict on the defense of their president. Second, why won't Russia be declared a terrorist state? Because reasons. I think this goes into the bigger picture, which we're going to talk when we're going to talk about why the ATACMS is not sent to Ukraine. But one of the reasons is that declaring a terrorist state will really make it harder for European partners to trade with Russia or have any kind of dealings. Because, for example, if you declare a country a terrorist state and some of the European countries continue trading with Russia, US is almost going to be essentially forced to put some kind of sanctions on the European partners. And US and Europeans have been throwing sanctions sometimes. So I don't really see this as a problem, but this has what I've heard. This is what I've heard. Again, not an expert on the full impact, but this is what I've heard from the analysis. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about the ATACMS and what's the bigger picture here. Martin, we both have Ukrainian wives. Where is your Vyshivanka? My Vyshivanka is very nicely somewhere in the boxes, still to be unpacked. I did actually video on the Vyshivanka day, and it was I believe Dugina, case of Dugina. So you can scroll down in my videos. There is when Dugina got killed. I did a video in Vyshivanka. Quist84, thank you so much. Welcome to the Brothers in Arms. Martin continues asking, and if I understand, you also have a family member that participates in the war? Yes, I do. We just prepared a parcel for ours as he is joining soon too. Nice. How is your family member doing? He is doing well. As I said, some donations from this channel went to help finance him buying his Life Vest, and he actually got defended from shrapnel of a mine exploding near him, or like a missile, not a missile, but like a shell exploding not far from him, and some shrapnel got caught in his Life Vest. So he was protected with it by the West that essentially the profits from this YouTube channel, what you guys essentially did. So this is where you all get my eternal thanks, to essentially protect the health or maybe even life of my family member. In case you drive by a car to Ukraine someday, would be happy to have a beer with you, either on a stop to your way there. I would love that. I'm definitely planning to talk with you a lot, guys, when this war is over. We're going to plan everything. The only problem is the car. I don't have a license. I don't drive a car at all. Antonio Pereira asks, Ukraine matters. EU is going to declare Russia as a terrorist sponsor state next Monday. Yes, but also no. So what comes is a political declaration by the European Parliament. So if it's accepted in European Parliament, then they do declare Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism and a state that uses terroristic that does terroristic activities. The problem with that is that none of those are defined in the legal charter of the European Union. So it's going to be only a political declaration and not kind of law, like not what they have, for example, in US, when they have specific laws stating that if a country is declared state sponsor of terrorism, then this kind of sanctions should apply to it. Europe does not have this. So basically, it's just going to be a political description saying that, hey, Russia is a terrorist. And then they say, well, what is the definition of terrorist? And what do we do with it then? And it's not in the side of the European Union. However, this does give some kind of political talking points for the Ukrainians, where, for example, they say, okay, if you're not going to supply us weapons, well, we're fighting the terrorist state here. But it's just like that. Right. Let's go. Linda Burchell asks, has heat been restored in Ukraine? Not so much. My contacts so far are saying the situation is quite dire. They've been essentially saying that in the last 3 days they got about 12 hours of electricity, and obviously no electricity, no heating. So they get some heat, but it's very limited. But I know a lot of my friends and family members have been moving to the houses outside of big cities and trying essentially to stay heated with any kind of wooden stoves, wood-based heating systems. Yes, Jake Bro on Attackums. Yes, I've seen what Jake Bro stated his video on Attackums. Again, it was the same saying that, hey, Attackums is not the best missiles. I'm calling bullshit because they could have sent 4 or 5 missiles and see if they're not efficient. They just don't send them, but they just have a taboo on sending them. It's the same with not allowing Ukraine striking targets on the Russia proper territory. They're basically like Ukraine is being pressured to fight with one of their hands tied behind their backs. So that's the unfortunate truth. So while US is a good partner for Ukraine, it's also is a very, very tricky partner in that sense. Jake Bro is good stuff. Agree. You should all subscribe and watch Jake Bro channel. You can find it in I don't know. Someone post a link to Jake Bro channel. Okay. Davis Michael Wayne asks, very interested in how we can help Ukraine with its power crisis. Obviously, power and spare parts for the power generation is a big challenge for Ukraine, and it only can come from the government supports. So continuing demanding that from your governments would help. If we say if there is private companies knowing which kind of generators would be good for Ukraine, that would be nice. So yeah. So those kind of support. But other than that, warm clothes, batteries, accumulators, so things like that would help a lot. Wisi asks, how do you and your wife rate Danish food? I think it's pretty good, especially the Christmas food. The Christmas food is really good. Christmas food is excellent, especially. But my wife has fallen in love with this, the smoked mackerel. She very much liked that one. I, for my, have felt in love with roulette. It's like a rolled cake with sweet things. It costs 10 kroner, 15 kroners or something. Like, it's cheap as fuck, but I love it. Davis Michael continues. Transformers. Apparently a 2-year waiting list for transformer manufacturers, although Ukraine has asked permission to jump the queue. Yes, that's just what I said, yes. So many EU countries agreed to supply transformers and spare parts. Heating tents. Yes, those have been popping up. Guys, if you know heating tents and you can supply heating tents, yes, those help a lot. I know people that have been using heating tents. It's very nice, but there are very few in Ukraine right now. They need more. In cities that have subways, can the stations be heated? Ukraine has declared that they will make heating spaces from normal, well insulated buildings, such as schools, kindergartens, administrative buildings, hospitals, etc. Subways are not the best because subways are very cold by its nature. Even during the summer, whatever, if you just go downstairs, you will just get a lot of like, they're not insulated, the subways. So it's very hard to heat them and then keep that heat inside of the subways. But obviously, if there's going to be any kind of massive strikes, there will be smoked mackerel. Yeah. Yeah. Stephen Churchill asks, how do we stop Russian infrastructure attacks? What could or should the West be doing? Send more weapons. Li Ming asks, I would love if you could do a brief comment opinion on alleged Turkey prohibition of non-insured ships through the grain deal. Okay, so grain deal is a big deal for Erdogan, for his reputation. He put basically his reputation on the line. So grain deal is very much Erdogan's personal Berlusconi. Yes, Berlusconi. Thank you. It was Berlusconi. Yes, perfect. Thank you, Nitramuz. Yeah, Berlusconi is the person that I was talking about, Italy, not Salvini. But yes, so that's why Erdogan feels that he needs to continue the grain deal because he's getting reputation, he's getting clout that way. So if there is some kind of hold up with non-insured ships or whatsoever, I'm thinking that it's a bureaucratic procedure with just processing the ship. I don't think that there is a political will there to stop grain deal. And I think it's very much in the political will of Erdogan to continue the grain deal. So I think he will try to influence a little bit down the line for this grain deal to continue. Li Ming asks, continues, what are the worst case scenarios if Russia has established fire control superiority in the Pavlovka direction with the geo features? Is this bad as Somalis fear? Why isn't more reporting of this danger? Because it's not a big deal in a big picture, right? I know it, like media and a lot of the people, they try to find some kind of, like, oh, if Russia takes this settlement, it's going to be a big deal. Like let's take Bakhmut, it's the biggest one. Like people are stating and discussing Bakhmut because Russian propaganda has been agitating for it for so long that Bakhmut is like basically like the end-all be-all settlement for the Ukrainian conflict. That if Ukrainian army, for example, takes Bakhmut, and not even Pavlivka is like village, it just doesn't matter in the scale of war. Ukraine has like the whole Izium area, the Kharkiv Oblast was captured. Like now it's not anymore. The whole Kherson, biggest city ever. Like someone like, if we're going by this argument, Kherson, the city, the regional capital of the region, that is a big deal. Again, recaptured by Ukraine. We need to understand that whatever Russia is capturing, it's always about the progress. It's always about how well they can achieve, how well they're going towards winning the war. And Russia's statement for winning this war is essentially, we need to destroy Ukraine. And with their advancements, they're not destroying Ukraine anytime soon. Like there's a lot of Ukraine left. So whatever they're capturing, yes, it can give some certain advantages. It will help their positions, their operational states, but they will still need to find the Ukrainians and they will still need to go forward. So the goal is to stay on the money and not get too much into the Russian propaganda loop, into the news loop, because every news and major article wants to talk about something, right? Especially like this is something about also on my channel, like when you go talk about daily updates, like what do you do? What do you talk about daily updates? And that's why some people talk about, there's been like this tactical movement on this particular, and then sometimes people get overestimate the value necessity of certain captured points. I know that Ukraine will then need to spend, more time, and it will be dangerous then to capture this, so more Ukrainians will die. But in the big picture, Ukraine is winning, and this war is going only one way only. That's it. That's the big picture. Do you think Russia will stop trying? JC the Music Man asks, do you think Russia will ever stop trying to destabilize the world? What can Ukraine do to protect itself after regaining all territories back? There's going to be actually a question about it as well, so I'm going to answer right now. Basically, Russia is always going to try to destabilize the world. What I think is going to happen is that Russia. Okay, we cannot talk about this until we talk about the bigger picture. Okay, let me find a question with the ATACMS, and then we're going to talk. This is going to be big talk. Yes. So, okay. So people ask, long story short, why does NATO and US especially not send more weapons to Ukraine? And more, I am coming to the understanding that I believe that US and a lot of analysts that I'm listening to are saying something similar, is that US wants a controlled destruction of Russia. So US wants for Russia not to fall apart in a way that it would cause unpredictable situation in the world. They are worried that some kind of aggressive groups that are not controlled and are not influenced, for example, for the Western powers that they have no leverage on, would come to fruition in Russia, and this would be essentially destructive. So instead of Ukraine completely dominating the battlefield, winning Russia altogether, what US is doing is essentially they are choking Russia out. US is using the donations of the weapons and supply of weapons to essentially choke the Russia out, to keep essentially the very accurate track on how fast Russia is disintegrating and where are the major forces. So they are going to be able to keep track, especially of the nuclear weapons. That's why they don't just give all the weapons to Ukraine, so Ukraine just wins, and then some radical party would just overthrow and Russia is gone in the civil war or something even worse. And instead they're boiling the frog. That's what they're doing. They're doing it slowly and surely, that the Russian society maybe understands that what they're doing is wrong. And so the loss will not be, very strictly attributed to the fact that, it was NATO that destroyed Russia. Therefore, we need to make sure that NATO pays. That is the narrative that US and probably NATO as a whole does not want. So they decided to bite the bullets despite all of the atrocities that Russia has been creating, despite the war crimes committed. They obviously find that appealing, but they also want to stay in touch, especially on the nuclear arsenal. And I think we will see the play of the US for the most part when there's going to be an option to either find someone in charge in Russia that would be okay, for example, to give, like secure and give over or decide to destroy all the Russian nuclear arsenal, or at least remove it. That is the idea. Is no one really, for example, wants negotiations. No one wants negotiation. It's just a talking point for a lot of the people, just to maybe there is someone that will come over. Maybe the party of war inside of Kremlin will start getting an opposition from some kind of party of peace. The US, by calling to negotiations, is not calling that much maybe to Putin, by trying to invite to the table some of the parties inside of maybe Kremlin or someone else to try to settle on the table. Obviously, it's going to be probably Ukrainian terms that will come to negotiations. But US is searching. US is searching for someone who basically will have the balls to overthrow Putin and do it in a way that would be supported by the majority of Russians without throwing the country into civil war. So the nuclear arsenal can go to some radical terrorists that will blame NATO and US for all the destruction, and then would put the whole world in danger. Mark Raven, love listening to you. Please keep up excellent work and perspective. Slava Ukraine. Best wishes from the UK. Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you for 50 pounds. I really appreciate every penny. And remember, at least 25 of those, well, not 25. Okay, I'm not saying, I'm not lying. Okay. I want to say lying, but I'm not really lying, but I always forget to take the taxes off because I am always forgetting that there's going to be part of this that goes into taxes. And in Denmark, we have quite a big taxes. But just so you know, next month, I'm going to talk about this in a channel update, but next month, the payment to Ukraine will go a little bit later because I will not be able to receive the money as fast. I basically run to the limit of what I can get personally as a physical person, that I can get as my secondary income, essentially, besides my job. So I needed to register a new company, and I am right now in the process of re-registering the YouTube. So basically all of the payments are on hold right now. Don't get me wrong, all of the money is still like a frozen. It's gonna go forward. It's just the destination basically right now doesn't exist because I cannot receive it. So until I set up the full company profile and everything, I will not be able to release the money then towards Ukraine as well. So sorry for these technicalities. I know you want to help Ukraine as much as I do. And also thank for a tip for Eurokiosk. My friend's wife, also Latvian, was very pleased with news I told her. Yes, very welcome. Do you think Russia will ever stop? I just talked about it. Basically, yes. Russia, so coming back to the question that we started with, will Russia stop threatening the world? That is what US is trying to do. That is the goal of US. Kellen Dunn, do you think UA has achieved irreversible momentum on the battlefield yet? Yes, I believe so. Meaning, even if Russia mobilize another 1 million men, they cannot recapture lands next year. I mean, they can capture some lands. They can capture some lands. So think about it this way. So the war started. So Russia was somewhere here. Ukrainian capabilities were somewhere here. I'm gonna put this here. I hope you can hear me. I'm a little bit further from the microphone. So when Russia invaded Ukraine, they did it in a very dumb way. So Ukraine, even by possessing smaller capabilities, that some of them got diminished by the initial strike of the Russians, because Russia acted as a complete idiot and did the idiot tactics at the start of the war, and because their army is shit, they got really hard hit. And Ukraine captured some of the equipment, and Russian equipment got lost during the Kyiv offensive. Then Russia decided, okay, we still have an advantage and Ukraine started mobilizing. Russia said, okay, we need to then focus on the east side and maybe south side. So they repositioned their power on the east side. And Ukraine said, okay, we don't have a lot of equipment, so we cannot do any attacks whatsoever. So whatever forces we have, whatever equipment we have, just throw it to stop Russia. So Ukraine went in a hard defense. And this started decreasing the stocks for both Ukraine and Russia, but for Russia faster. And then we saw this. And then US started supplying, the US and European powers started supplying Ukraine with weapons. Slowly but surely, Ukraine stopped, essentially, it continued losing stuff on the front lines, but it also had some stuff on the back where they started picking up. They got some new equipment and so on. And then about after capturing Lysychansk and Severodonetsk, Russia peaked. They grinded themselves down. They grinded themselves with the Ukrainian army. They achieved parity. Not in equipment count, like the count of equipment in Russia is still higher than Ukraine, but their combat power possibilities just didn't work as well. And then Ukraine also got HIMARS. And when Ukraine got HIMARS, they started decreasing some of the Russian stocks. And some of the additional supplies got already for Ukraine. And then they also got some mobilized men trained and so on. And then Russia is like, okay, we're gonna put more people on the ground and so on. And then they went in this position. So, and then Russia continued losing people, continued. And then Ukraine said, okay, we now have more battle capabilities. Let's do the Kherson offensive. And this is where Kherson offensive has been decided. Russia at that moment said, okay, we're going to send some troops to Kherson area. And instead of these troops, contributing to general battle capability, they overall, roughly saying, removed their battle capabilities a little bit more. So at that moment, Ukraine is like, okay, Kharkiv. They captured Kharkiv, they got more, and Russia basically was fucked. And then Russia said, okay, we're mobilizing. And then basically, as Ukraine was attacking, it was losing resources because attacking side loses more resources than defending ones. But because Russia started mobilizing, they got some influx of manpower, and then we basically came into the same line. So right now, with Russia mobilized, and Ukraine is getting the situation where it's getting resources, but Russia is basically engaging all the resources for which they just didn't have manpower. So now both parties essentially are on the even, roughly speaking, and rising. However, Ukraine is getting a lot more battle-capable troops. They are getting more modern equipment, whereas Russian equipment stockpiles are starting to run somewhat dry. We haven't seen a lot of videos with convoys that would be, like thousands of, like hundreds of kilometers long. I'm joking, but you get my point. Russia is running low on equipment, and some of the basic equipment, such as tents, such as sleeping bags for the troops, is really bad. So can Russia mobilize? Yes, yes. But most probably these men will not be able to raise the battle capability so high just because the equipment for them is not there. So Ukraine, by getting the more and more power, can dip a little bit when the Russia, for example, sends its first like 300 men, and then like Russia will have, okay, we have some time. Maybe they will capture Bakhmut or something. But then Ukraine will still, in a long run, overcome them. I hope this explains it a little bit, because Russia is running short on equipment, and mobilization does not solve the main core problems Russia is having. Their battle capability does not just come from the number of men. That took forever, didn't it? Didn't it? It did. But now you saw how well I am explaining with my hands. M270 will move better than HIMARS in snow. Attackams would be better for HIMARS, more as stands off near further and still hit targets. Yes and no. HIMARS is good on roads because Ukrainians are using HIMARS on the roads. So roads are usually more or less okay, even for wheeled vehicles. Your thoughts on the origin of the missile that hit the Poland farmers? I don't see any reason to doubt the official narrative by the NATO members. So far, no proofs have been presented that it's not that. Do you think Ukraine will end up like Israel and a strong, self-reliant local defense industry supporting forces and routing high alert? Yes and no. Will Ukraine get militarized? Yes, but also Poland. And also Ukraine will join European unions. Poland and Ukraine will be unbeatable by Russia at whatever state in the future. It will be not fucking possible. Okay. What's up with Hungary and Orban? I already talked about it. I think Hungary and Orban needs to be suspended from NATO and EU until rule of law is reinstated and we have our Hungarian democracy back. It's an authoritarian regime that is just going further and further down the hole, the same path as Putin, and we should react before it's too late, before it becomes a problem for the whole continent. All right, further questions. Bruce, Sambo J asks about the missile conspiracy. So about, that someone mixed up the coordinates between Kiev and guys, it has no basis in it, right? It's a conspiracy theory. Like debunking conspiracy theories is a tough job that's completely, I'm not sure if required. Like if people want to believe dumb shit, they continue believing dumb shit. People have the right to believe whatever they want, but I can say that for what is proofs, and proofs is that we know that the AWACS of the NATO was in the area and they probably tracked the missile. That's why they reported it first. And secondly, Ukrainian personnel came into the explosion site, and so far I haven't seen big media reports that, hey, it wasn't actually a Ukrainian missile. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter, even by game theory. Lagdan asks, how much control do you think Russian high command has over its troops? A lot. Russia is very much top-down structure controlled, but the control is kind of it's shifting, it's waning. There are some reports of the insubordination within Russian army, but it's so far local and very anecdotal events. So we need a more systematic thing to be seen. Mark Garcia is asking, how might the pace of the war change when the ground freezes? I'm going to talk about next time, but it's going to speed up. The war is going to become more dynamic, more aggressive. Kalendan asks, can Ukraine restart its defense industry? Oh, wait, am I reading from the start? Yeah, Ukraine can restart its defense industry. I talked about this. They're going to do it with Poland and some other countries from from NATO. Taisteluk Kuna asks, what is the best in life? Victory. DPELPAL. DPELPAL. Sorry for butchering the name. What kind of info do we have on Ukraine's winter kit? I know Canada has sending winter clothes. Many countries have sent winter clothes, but I still receive requests from the front lines, people asking for warm shoes. They say that some warm shoes that have been coming with the winter kits are not warm enough. So, yes. Why doesn't UA use manpads for missile defense? Thousands of them all over Ukraine. They do. That's why it's so effective. Have you not seen the numbers that Ukrainian missile defense is doing, or you're just trolling me? Syndex, I missed the start of the live session. Ukraine man's greetings from Bulgaria and Slava Ukraini. I'm going back to watch from beginning. Sure. Ask questions, by the way. Even if you watch from beginning, just ask questions and I will answer them. All right. So yeah, in winter, we're going to be awaiting a very active warfare because we already see things on the move. Winter and summer are really good for offensives, whereas like Rasputitsa, the wet period for Ukraine is actually the thing that's usually slowing down. Does Ukraine still mainly rely on electric trains? Are they getting any diesel, etc.? They have mainly diesel trains. I know they've been substituting some of them. No. It's all the same. Like Ukraine has a lot of older trains as well. Not older trains, but they have a lot of diesel trains. It's just they were running a lot of electric trains as well. Kelendan asks, does every UA soldier have night vision? No. This will be important for winter months when it's darker. No. Guys, Ukraine has very little equipment. We still don't understand just how huge this war is. Like how many people are in this war. What's the churn of equipment? What's the, like how fast equipment needs to be changed? It is huge. Like you can buy like essentially like a scope for a guy and he can within a week write you like, hey, thanks for the scope. It's just it was just hit by a shrapnel. Now it's not usable. Now I need a new scope. The churn is huge and Ukraine needs everything like in huge in bigger numbers than they're able to get now. How do you think G. McGregor asks, how do you think the Mobics will do this winter in the trenches with their foot wraps and their rubber boots? Very bad. There's not going to be a lot of Mobics left by the end of the winter. David Miharija asks, Miharija maybe? I don't know. Sorry for butchering this. How much will Russia targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure affect Ukrainian logistics and counter-offensives? Counter-offensive, not a lot. Logistics, a bit. We need to understand that army most often is autonomous. That's why hitting like all the power plants and so on has a very limited effect on the actual facilities and so on. A lot of the army equipments and infrastructure is autonomous to the civilian one. And I know it's kind of like affecting somewhat because like, like some of the support needs to come for the support of civilian sector rather than for the army. And I've heard these arguments, but I'm pretty sure that Ukraine can both walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. All right. John Patrick Power asks, how will Ukraine deal with the separatists once the war ends? How does Ukraine deal with captures the separatists now? I hope they're not exchanged. Some of them are exchanged, but Ukraine will trial them and find what they can prove. Most probably, they're going to be charged with treason, what is it called? The treason to the country, something like this. So, yeah, participation in illegal, how do you say, military organization, like threatening the sovereignty of the nation. So there's plenty of paragraphs that have been broken by the separatists. So it's going to be a big trial. A lot of people are going to get tried. Maureen Ibrahim and Paul McCormick asks, not giving UA weapons, do we want Ukraine to win? Yes, but I explained a lot that the point is to have a controlled war, essentially. Like, NATO wants this war to be controllably ended on the Ukrainian terms, not with a defeat where NATO would be seen as the bad guy. Mark Garcia is asking, I read that 85% of Ukrainian trains are electric. Is this true? Doesn't this risk logistics? Some of it does, but again, not everything. Okay, before I go back, and also, as I said, like, Ukraine has electricity. Like, Ukraine is not in a Stone Age yet. It's not constant electricity, but Ukraine has it. So even electric trains can still run. Okay, before I go back to the beginning, I have a question. Hopefully I don't repeat the previous. Antonovsky Bridge in Kherson. Why did the Russians blew up the side nearest to armed forces of Ukraine? Probably. Wait, was it though? I don't think it was the nearest one. The nearest one, like, they blew the bridge beyond the point where it was hit by HIMARS. And HIMARS was hitting it closer to the Kherson area. So if I remember correctly, the drone shots, then the Antonovsky Bridge was destroyed further where the HIMARS hit. So I think it was like somewhere in the middle that they blew. Well, middle. I don't know. Maybe those were the weak points. RF successes in the South were attributed to legacy corruption. Their thoughts. Perun just did a great video on the Kherson operation. I recommend you watching that, first and foremost. His latest video of Perun, that you can just search for him. And secondly, yes, as much as we heard, there was treason and corruption involved with Russians able to cross the bridges that were supposed to be blown up. Antonovsky Bridge as well was supposed to be blown up, but it wasn't. Did you hear about Ukraine's plan to change the rails with? It's unrealistic, not in a short term. Like, the Baltics are now, what, 20 years with the European Union? Almost 20 years. They still are struggling changing the width of rails. It's very, very, very nice, but no. How will the winter affect combat? It's going to become more aggressive, more fast-paced. A friend I know involved in shipping weapons, equipment, vests, scopes, winter clothing to Ukraine, and it's crazy how much fits in a 747, but more needed. Yes. Yes. Ukraine needs everything, every equipment, everything. Like, because the churn is just ludicrously high. Hellbound Chaos Command jokingly asks, I heard Bakhmut is about to be taken. What are your thoughts? I think that if Russia mobilizes 1 million men, they might take Bakhmut. It's not going to end in the large scale of the war. Ukraine is going to win at the end anyway. Our favorite Darth Putin's mouthpiece is asking. First question. I should have read it with some kind of accent, but I need some water before I do it, because let me try to Russian accent or something. I don't know. First question. When the Russian population will be sick of me and start to denazify me, what do you think needs to be done in order to A. Make Russia a democratic country? B. What needs to be done in order to keep Russia a democratic country and it won't slip back into autocracy, like Turkey, Hungary? Second question. Do you promise not to forget the timestamps in your next video? I was whipping Shoigu last time you held a Q&A, So when I wanted to listen back to the only important part, the part with my question, obviously, I wasn't able to see my question. Let's answer that. I hope my Russian accent was it's terrible. I don't know. Don't worry. But yes, Darth Putin's mouthpiece. I by the way appreciate following the channel and writing. Super entertaining. Love it. Everyone in the community, I think, loves his comments as well. So when does Putin leave and Russian population? So far, Putin is very much isolated from the critiques. You should really listen to the Vlad Wexler's talk about the Russian mentality and so on. And he talks very well about the fact that there is still not a clear connection that what Putin is doing is bad and that what is happening is still there. Like Putin broke the social construct between Russia and Russian citizens and himself, but the consequences of the contract being broken are still not completely obvious. They still haven't realized that. So it's hard to say when it's going to happen. Definitely more people needs to die. More orcs needs to die. And we're talking what needs to be done to keep Russia a democratic country. That is a very good question. And I think this is firstly the main question that NATO is asking, like how do we not make Russia a worse part of Russia? And second, and the next part is that can we put some kind of a democratic leader in charge? And so far, it doesn't seem so, because the Russian opposition is a joke. I've talked way too much about it, and I don't want to come back, mostly because I don't really care about them. So, and the desire within the Russian society for democracy is very low. What the American invasions, which by the way, I condemn as well. I love US, but I think invading other countries to spread democracy, not the best thing. Not the best thing. If they just want to kill Saddam, fuck it, kill Saddam. But don't pretend that it's like for the good of the nation and to spread democracy or whatever. Like that's my position. I'm anti-imperialist on the US as well. But the point is, though, for the country, let's put it this way. There are countries that want to be democratic. One of the big things, for example, that people say to me, hey, you support Iranian protests? And I always answer the same thing. What are they for? Right? They are against the Iranian government, which is like highly, like I think it was not even authoritarian. It's the, what is it called? Like basically religiously fanatics that are running Iran. And my question is, what are they for? What are they protesting for? Like, obviously they are removing the headscarf, so there is some kind of desire for like liberties and human rights. But obviously it's not yet democracy. Like we don't see a lot of like, like democratic calls for we just see the calls, we need change. So that's why I think spreading democracy to the countries that don't want that might be a mistake. And this is where the question about, is Russia ready for democracy? And I am not sure. I am honestly not sure. Maybe the better option would be just to have smaller Russia with no nuclear missiles. Maybe that would be a safer option than to consider that Russia should become democratic and part of the, for example, European community. So it's a hard question to answer. And second questions, to stamps, I will try to do timestamps, but it's very hard to listen to like 2-3 hours of a video. I have a very tight schedule, but I will try. Okay. Have you heard of US sending MREs? Yes. How are the frontline troops rations? Mostly they're good. Mostly they are supplied. There are here and there like poorer situations where the logistics just cannot keep up. But overall, I've heard that troops on the front lines are more or less well fed. David is asking, when Putin is gone, how likely is what we will have Russia Hitler in 20-30 years? Isn't Putin Russia's Hitler? Like, I don't know. We might have. That is, I think, what NATO is trying to predict. So Russians won't have this, how do we say, payback. But even if we are, again, I think that's why everyone wants to limit, like get Russia, maybe smaller Russia with less nuclear weapons. How do we root out and completely destroy the FSB? We need the desire of the Russian people to do that. We need Russian people to understand that FSB is not their friends. Wusi says, Latvian guy doing English with Russian accent. I'm British. I lived in Denmark 26 years and I still can do Danish with foreign accents. Kudos, thanks. Danish is very hard. Danish is extremely hard. Like to pronunciation and understanding on the hearing, Danish is very hard. David is asking again, why didn't Russia destroy all the bridges? Wait, I answered that one. Okay. Kellen Dunn asks, I'm American. I agree with you. I hated that we invaded Iraq and false pretext. Yeah, exactly. It was done. We just need to recognize that we did mistakes. Like European countries, like European countries have been at the war at the throats of each other for so many centuries. But at some point, we just decided, okay, let's just start over. I think there is still a lot of kind of denial in the American society from what I can see. Again, not American. I'm not judging the system. I'm not judging Americans. Like you have your own culture, but I think there is still reflection to be done on that invading other countries was not that great. What I do think is bad is that thinking America bad, therefore everyone else in the world is right. This is what tankies do in US right now. It's like far left. It's people that say, oh, Russia is good because it opposes America and America is always bad. That is nonsense. Brian Poser is asking in Latvian. I'm going to read it in Latvian. Jautājums par kara ietekmi Latvijā. Es rakstīšu angļu valodā. My Latvian friends and in-laws say it is quite tense in Riga between Latvians and Russians. Yes. Are you hearing the same? Yes. Russians are they're not happy. They're not happy that now everyone needs to support Ukraine, and obviously they think that Ukrainians don't deserve to live, and obviously they want Ukrainians killed, and Latvians don't want Ukrainians killed, and this creates tensions. Let's put it this way. Once the invasion is over and Ukraine are in reconstruction, do you think they will get help to start mining their natural resources? I hope so. Yes, I believe yes. Especially lithium would be very useful. And natural gas as well would be very useful as well, because Europe does not have many lithium or natural gas producers inside of EU. So if Ukraine joins EU, when Ukraine joins EU, it will be a big boon for the European economy and for Ukraine as well. Is the West waiting for an internal revolution to take down Putler as opposed to beating Russia and leaving Putin to respond? No, I told you, no. They're not. US is not waiting. The West is not waiting for the internal revolution. They are hoping for internal revolution, but like to support someone without like a civil war. So revolution, but like a soft revolution. And they are trying to essentially squeeze the Russian population and Russian elites so they would take responsibility and take down Putin, but they will still want Ukraine to win. Aletheia asks, devil's advocate question, is it better for Putin to remain in power for now, given the risk for successor, maybe more for genocidal ultranationalist than he is? Yeah, people talked about this, especially about looking at someone that is Prigozhin, like Prigozhin is always claimed to be this like a war's version of Putin. That Putin right now is like, I've heard this said before, that Putin is essentially predictable, but some other parties are not. And I think this is kind of, everyone is considering, all the big players are definitely considering this, but I think he went beyond the ability of being useful. I think that's why they forgive him essentially for Crimea in 2014. But I believe that after Bucha and atrocities and non-discriminate shelling, I do not think that they see Putin as a continuation of being a leader inside of Russia. I think they want to find a party that is not Putin, that would be good for negotiations and maybe continuation power of Russia. But I don't think Putin is seen as a good substitute for him, as a good continuation for himself. But obviously, everyone is afraid that more extremes will be coming. In my experience in New York City, Russians do not integrate, and they really bring the worst qualities with them. Crime, anger, filth, slowness. Really, I'm not usually so judgmental. Randy, I mean that's the experience. Do you drink Tuborg? Yes, though I live in Odense, I really like Odense Classic. Odense Classic is pretty good. And yes, answering question, classic or Pilsner is classic. By the way, like some fun facts of from Denmark for you guys that are not from Denmark, from US and so on. So there is an internal question in Denmark. It is classic or Pilsner. There's like two beers. One is classic, which is a little bit more like hoppy-ish, and they look pretty much, they taste very similar to Pilsner as well. Pilsner is a little bit more bitter, maybe. But it's an internal question. Whenever you go to a bar and you say, like, can I get a beer? The first question you're going to hear is like classic or Pilsner. So that's one of the internal questions in Denmark, which people prefer. And the joke is that they both taste pretty much the same. It's like very much. It's time for Albany Blue Christmas beer. Yes, the best one of them. Okay, yeah, I'm waiting. Like Christmas beer is like J-Day is already out. So beer is already out there. So I am looking to get more beer for Christmas beer. So Christmas beer for people, again, another fun fact. So in Denmark, licorice is very popular. So Christmas beer, without going too much in details, is a beer with licorice. It has a sweeter taste. It's very popular. It's a big deal. Like there is a whole celebration, unofficial one, that's called J-Day. And usually people will go to their own like local bars and they would have a good old drink of beer and have hats and celebrate. It's a good day. Okay, more questions. Mats Larsen is asking, I wonder if Russian soldiers are aware that they are called orcs and if they get why. You would be surprised. Actually, the whole idea of orcs goes well before the invasion of Ukraine. The actual parallels have started actually before even the war started. The fact, because Russia is very poorly maintained. Like if you go, I'm not going to discuss on Latvian beers. It's a very touchy topic. Not going to talk about Latvian beers, but Latvian beers are okay. But basically, because Russia's, for example, other cities that are not Moscow or St. Petersburg are so poorly maintained, and the standards for living are so shit, and people are not taken care of, and like it's so garbage. Like Russia very often has been referred to as Mordor, like no joke, like a proper Mordor reference, like a Tolkien. So when Russians essentially started attacking, it came very natural that there were orcs that were coming from Mordor that were like in 2014 and so on. So especially when there was like there was these paramilitaries that were poorly trained and poorly dressed after 2014, showing themselves on the pictures, and it became like a joke that they look like that they are like out of the garbage, and like the orcs came out of like essentially the trash and so on. I don't remember the full history well, but essentially from the depths of the earth, from the shit. And so did the Russians. And then and kind of just when they became in 2022 this army of I cannot call them warriors, like army of mass of men that just robbed, pillaged, and just behaved like complete animals. It was just a natural continuation. So the story is actually going way longer than anyone would expect. It's not only here, but I'm pretty sure they are aware of that. Okay. First troll question. By the way, yeah, I said ask questions, and I was expecting a lot of troll questions, and it's very nice answering those because like they're very silly. because I usually just ban them, and then like whatever conversations you guys have with them, you usually you don't have the chance to participate in this fun stuff. We'll probably make a post about should I or should I not ban trolls, because it can get sometimes very annoying, when they just write different comments, and I usually just delete them to keep the channel sanitized. But we'll maybe have a vote on whether or not you want or do not want leaving troll questions. But the troll questions. Major Heart is asking, why is it that those who protest against the help for Ukraine saying it's warmongering and are not pro-Russian, just anti-war? Give us all a solution. No sane person wants war, so please tell us what we should do. We are waiting. So complete joke, this position that, oh, I cannot understand. I want to protest the war. I'm not protesting against Russian. It is okay. I'm gonna take it super seriously. I'm gonna actually talk about this. So the serious answer is that is equation of a victim and an attacker. Let's take rape case. Whenever a person gets raped, when you start calling it the conflict, or let's call it the situation, let's call it that there was like a rape, imagine, and then you start sanitizing your speech by calling it the situation, and then you say, I am protesting the situation, so the consequences of that situation would not happen. We should prevent things to be used, like for example, like weapons to be used, and maybe both parties should stop participating in that situation. So the obvious analogy is one party chose to participate in this situation, as you call it. I'm going to continue this joke. Whereas the other party did not chose to participate in situation. So when a party wants to enforce its will, and that would be the softest way to put it, on the party A, and then party A has dead people and has significant consequences, whereas the party that is attacking is just going to be done and just going to be essentially said, you should not have done it. And then they say, okay, maybe I shouldn't. Or maybe they don't even say that at all. That is not an equal exchange. That is not the world that I would want to live in. That is not the world that many other countries and many people that died before me, that have established the understanding that the rule of law is not just a word, that we have a certain obligation for the world not to be savage, for the fact that the person that has the might would not be then acted upon without him not defending itself. When people, and I'm going to switch from the analogy of rape right now. So when a person says, I don't want weapons to send to Ukraine, what the person is actually saying, I want more people killed in Ukraine. I want, so there is more torture chambers. I want pro-Ukrainian narratives to be destroyed. I want Ukrainian people killed. I want the Ukrainian kids to be more deported. That is what you're advocating against. You are not against the war. A person that advocates against the war and or supply of weapons to Ukraine is actually advocating for the position of attacker. So he is advocating that the attacker should be able to do whatever it does, and then get away with it. So when a world says we should help protect the victim in this case, and while we are not ourselves morally ready to participate in this war, that we are still afraid that this might end the world, that we are very much afraid of that, that we still maybe want to support the victim, we're just not ready to act on our own. But we at least are saying we're going to give that victim a fighting chance. So when we say we are giving you a fighting chance. Once you start saying, let's stop sending weapons to Ukraine, you're saying, let's stop giving Ukraine a fighting chance. Let's allow Russia to enforce its will and kill more citizens and more people and destroy more of Ukraine than it already has, without Ukraine having the tools necessary to fight off. That's why the anti-war position is probably one of the most, if not the most immoral positions in this conflict that I have ever seen. It is not a war that is happening in some third world, not third world, but somewhere happening in a world in a third contested land somewhere over the resources. It is a place where one of the parties is being their life, their culture, their history, and the lives of their relatives taken from them, the people being tortured, and they don't want this. They just want to live, exist, survive, whereas Russia wants to destroy it all. So it is so immoral, in my perspective, to put a coat of paint like you are this great, peaceful, like holding a white dough in every hand, proposer for peace, like you are the smart guy. But what you are actually hiding, that behind this facade that you paint of yourself, this proposition is covered in blood of innocent people. That is what I can answer you to this. The only moral action for anyone in this is to try to support and give Ukraine a fighting chance to the best of their abilities. That is the only answer to this. If you are contemplating that you just don't like the war, you are delusional, and I don't understand how are you still existing in this situation, existing in this world. That's it. That's it. All right. I took it way too serious. Short answer: more weapons. Lorna Morgan is saying, is asking, the news that Russia is in recession with sanctions, the war mobilization, the people that left Russia. Do you feel it will make Putin more desperate in Ukraine for any kind of victory to hang on to power? Yes. Yes, Putin needs any kind of victory. That's why he's asking for anything like Bakhmut or anything. Just give him something. Like Kherson has been a very big blow to Putin's hold on power, but I don't put a lot of trust in Russian society. Do you have any information? Nobleheart 111 says, do you have any information on the general whereabouts of the Ukrainians that were evacuated to the EU and NATO nations, and what current steps and programs their governments are taking to ensure the safety and health of those refugees? I can talk for Denmark. I know in Denmark the program started off roughly. There was not enough housing to allow in Denmark, and there was a lot of confusion because, for example, in Denmark, on the northwestern part of Denmark, we have a lot of housing possibilities. But for some reason, they decided that it would be okay to host refugees maybe in a city, for example, like Odense, where we are having huge issues with housing. And they had to essentially stuff a lot of the people inside of the rooms. Like they were, for example, inside of old, the retirement home. And they had stuffed like 6 to 8 people inside of like very small rooms with Ukrainian refugees where people basically were living on bunk beds. So it was little to no private space. However, as the time went by, I know a lot of Ukrainian refugees have left Denmark and returned back to Ukraine, whereas other ones, some of them moved in Denmark to the places where other refugees were, because they said, for example, in the northwestern part, they were able to get like a whole house for themselves. So they were there were available options for people to move into. And I know most of the people, even in here in Odense, have been now spread out in at least their own, maybe small, but apartments. So it was rough. I'm expecting something similar happen in some other places. It was rough at the beginning. Many Ukrainians went back to Ukraine after the liberation of Kiev, but many of them are still here in NATO and EU states. Yes. Sir Garrick says like that the people that are trolls are second-hand war criminals. I'm gonna borrow that from you. I think it's a great description. How about I'm not interested in politics excuse? I mean, like, does that mean that like people have no opinion on civilians being killed, like on torture? Like, what does it mean? I don't understand. What does it mean in this situation? Like, I'm not interested in politics. Yes, but do you support torture and rape of children? That would be a good question to ask. Have you watched Maxim Katz or do you know of him? Yes, I watched Maxim Katz. He is a huge bullshitter. He is not a friend of Ukraine. He is a very not nice person. Well, okay. Let's put it this way. I disagree on a lot of things, if not most of what he stands for and how he presents it. I think whatever he is doing is flawed, but I think principally, if he would be like, as a party in a government, in a democratic government, not a government, democratic parliament, I would not vote for him because I think his policies would be shit. However, if I compare him to like any kind of authoritarian or part of the Putin's current machine, he's obviously miles better. So Nobleheart continues, what might be the likely consequence of so many people leaving Ukraine and what might happen to those refugees over the next few years? Well, some of them will go back to Ukraine. They already established it, but I think it's going to be good because they will come back to Ukraine with fresh perspectives. So I'm optimistic about it. Once Ukraine starts recovering economically, I'm believing that these people will come back to Ukraine with a lot of new perspectives of how things should be done in the country, which is great. What is the current status and danger to the civilian population of Ukraine given Russia's most recent focus of missile attacks on civilian infrastructure? It's tough, but we already talked that Ukrainian population is just amazingly resilient. And if we learned anything from the Blitz, that attacks against civilian population does not help win the war. Are water, food, transportation, and power supplies adequate for the coming winter? And if not, how might NATO and its allies provide additional humanitarian aid? Is it adequate to have a comfortable life? Probably not, but I believe that vast majority will be able to get through the winter of Ukrainians. I don't believe it's going to be critical to the extent that it's going to be devastating for all of the Ukrainian society. NATO munitions, I talked about this. Tanks, ATACMS, yes, it's all about the plan for the controllable war. I'm more and more trying to believe it. But EU have stepped up on delivering of weapons, guys. Must say, gave a lot of shit for France, Germany, taking everything back. They are doing quite well. I'm getting all of the reports how much the EU countries are doing for Ukraine, and it's amazing. EU has been stepping up massively. Sarunas is saying, I can understand the Russian cruelty on civilians. They should know themselves that this shit doesn't work in the long run and builds the resentment. Yeah, I tried to understand, but this is beyond me. Like, I really tried to understand, but but that moment, like when I start thinking about like what would be the reasons and so on, I just stopped understanding. Like, it's beyond this kind of cruelty, is beyond my worldview. I cannot fit myself in the shoes. I would be probably a very bad detective for against, like, serial murders and so on. So yeah, I it's a very good question. Probably, if I ever talk with Vlad Wexler, then I will probably ask this question. It's a very good question. I don't know how to answer, but I think Vlad might know. Michael Jones asks, should we build a great wall like China did? The horde will keep coming. Well, I mean, Ukraine has already started. There's a big Belarusian wall that's being built. A start it is. James Walsh asks, what do you think the rough ratio of troops are now? Now that Ukrainian army conscripts are passing out from their training every week, do you think Ukraine are overmatching them in trained military personnel yet? Or is, of course, close running? Ukraine is still in favorable position. Ukraine is still dominant in a number of trained personnel. Ukraine is lacking in battle-capable like equipment, like because a lot of the equipment that's coming in is just replacing the old one. Ukraine needs big influx of a lot of new weapons and equipments. I'm hoping they're being delivered, but I don't know. And again, we'll probably know about the new troops that have been freshly trained if we learn from previous actions of General Zaluzhny. Then they are being essentially right now prepared inside of Ukraine and ready for the big offensive when the winter comes fully. Yeah. The second way, well, I mean, it's the mobilization will not stop. Do you think? Do you think that it will go down with the regular Russians? I don't care. I don't care how it will go down with the regular Russians. To be honest, I don't give a shit. Ukraine will overcome everything. We just need to support Ukraine, and the armed forces of Ukraine will deal with whatever number of Russians they will send. Yes. Okay. We're halfway with the questions, a little bit over halfway. Benoit Bu says, I've heard reports of Russian soldiers being evacuated from the left bank of Kherson, saying I don't think it's evacuated. I think they were being withdrawn a little bit further from the lines because it's very hard to defend the left bank. Would they mean that they're going to flood the place? No, I don't think so. I don't think they will. Besides, Ukraine might already have access to the dam, and they might already be checking the dam and demined it. We just don't know. Ray Baines asks, should Ukraine be given a limited number of tactical nuclear weapons to deter Russia from using ones? No. Russia will not use nuclear weapons. It's not on the table. It has no options. Russia has been choked dead from using nuclear weapons. There is not going to be nukes used in this war. MP, is there any war crimes in the list that haven't been done yet? That's a very good question. I don't know. I don't think so. I think Russia has been doing everything that it's like they were just being like with a checklist or like a bingo, more like a bingo for the Geneva Convention. It's like, yes, which of the units have first achieved bingo on all of the war crimes? It's fucked up. Vlad Drak asks, Lend-Lease, where the fuck is that? Nobody seems to know, just vanished. Lend-Lease has always been there, and Lend-Lease is there. It's essentially backup point for Biden to cut the red tape when it's not needed. So in that sense, for example, Biden can supply Ukraine with Abrams tanks, despite they are having the depleted uranium armor. So before, the argument was that the Abrams tanks were not delivered to Ukraine because they have depleted uranium armor, and the US have some laws on the export of the depleted uranium, which was very weird when I heard it. And obviously now with the Lend-Lease, they can cut. But we need to understand what Lend-Lease is. Lend-Lease is an act that gives the president power to essentially determine any kind of equipment to be delivered to Ukraine. So he can cut any kind of red tape that is in there. Right now, with the Democrats holding the Senate, I don't believe there's going to be any problems with weapons deliveries via the normal channels. I don't think there is a need for Biden to use Lend-Lease because the regular deliveries are doing the job. Mark Farnan, stay strong. Your updates are fantastic and are vital to keep the free world updated. Thank you so much. US and allies keep weapons going into Ukraine. I know they will. Thank you so much. F-16s, yes. A-10s. A-10s is the same problem as Bayraktar. A-10 requires a weapons air superiority. Ukraine still doesn't have air superiority. How do you see Ukraine's path to NATO after the war? Very short, very fast. Okay. Albert Trollo asks, wow, what a name. What do you know about European companies who are still selling technology to Russia? I heard about thermal visors from France are still being sold. Are some sanctions being avoided? Last I've heard about the thermal sites, that was the scandal that the thermal sites were found inside of the Russian tanks. They were delivered after 2014, when supposedly the ban on shipment of these highly advanced equipment was ensured. The loophole in that law was that you cannot make new contracts to ship equipment to Russia. However, what can be done is you can prolong and adjust older contracts. So for that, for example, for thermal vision, what was happening, that they did essentially prolongation of contract and said, oh, we actually need to deliver more thermal sites and the contract will be longer. And then they did it again and again and again and again. So there was a loophole that they abused. But as far as I've heard, current sanctions package is quite strict, and EU and US do go after the companies that try to avoid it. Will it be avoided fully? Probably not. But I definitely at least heard that they are trying to do so. So will we hear cases that some of the tech companies are delivering stuff to Russia? Yes. I mean, Lavrov has the latest iPhone. So where did he get it? If iPhone is not present in Russia anymore. That's one. So yeah, we will definitely see things like this happening. Ron Brock says, thank you, Georgie, for helping us clear on everything, especially answering the questions why. You're welcome. My question is, what do you think the next big push will be? As I said, I think it's going to be towards Melitopol, Zaporizhia, and then to Crimea. Some have said that it will take the rest of Kherson region and push on south to begin retaking the Crimea. I think the naval assault over Dnipro is unlikely. I do not think it should be done because Ukraine will put itself in a very dangerous position. I think the naval assault might be possible if, for example, Ukraine will be able to capture Enerhodar, and then basically they will cross the river around Novakhovka and they will link up. In that sense, when there is like a land corridor, maybe, but again, not very likely, because Ukraine doesn't want to do basically the same, be in the same situation that the Russian forces were just a little bit while ago. Yes, let's see. David Sharpie asks, do you think China will make a move on Vladivostok when Russia is suitably weakened? It might. It might. I'm not sure if it's going to be a military one, but China might just buy, like like China might say, we're going to pay some of your debts, but like you sell us Manchuria. Do you ever watch Vladimir Zolkin POW interviews? When I can. They're very long and quite extensive, but I do watch them sometimes. Do you see Ukraine making independent military alliance outside intervention from non-NATO? Ukraine has already stated that they want to join NATO, but until NATO is accepting them, until maybe Hungary will start blocking them, they are demanding some kind of a non-NATO defense protocol be made, which is, in a nutshell, an alliance around alliance. Wish asks, Denmark also made the mistakes of leaving helping refugees to the municipalities, and some are doing really bad job. Fair, but that's how the Danish democracies are working. Danish democracy, why am I saying democracies? Spin M120 asks, what are your thoughts about the Transnistria, so-called quasi-republic? Honestly, I don't quite get it. It's a small enclave cut off from Russia, and yet they persist. Why can't they be ended? Do you think its existence is feasible? It seems to me that they pose a constant risk to Ukraine flank. They don't pose any risk. First, let's be clear. They don't pose any risk to Ukraine. Ukraine has numbers like the advantage towards Ukraine in that region is infinite compared to what they have in Transnistria. It cannot be supplied, so any kind of prolonged conflict is not possible. So Transnistria is a part of Moldova, so Ukraine cannot just go in and recapture, because by the legal, they are not recognized, they are quasi-state. But by legal definitions, they are part of Moldova. So if Ukraine will go and, for example, clear out Transnistria, it will be involvement itself into the Moldova's internal politics. And Moldova's internal politics are difficult. There is a lot of pro-Russian sentiment inside Moldova. So while Maya Sandu really wants to have a pro-European country, it's a very tight split in between, essentially 50-50, despite the whole war. Moldova is probably one of the toughest positions in as a country in the old post-Soviet states, just because they are so poor. They don't, well, I mean, they have Romania, but they haven't embraced working with Romania before. And Ukraine was not supporting that much of Moldovan Republic before the 2014. Ukraine was very heavily dependent and very much in line with a lot of what Russian politics around Moldova was there. Okay. Since Rona Bailey asks, since Russians are too scared to do regime change, should other military help? Many Russians may have Stockholm. Many Russians may have Stockholm. Maybe Stockholm syndrome? So, yeah, maybe Russians may have Stockholm syndrome. I don't know. I don't think that other military should help, because that will be then a narrative that will allow to switch the narrative that Russia is now essentially defending itself. Because while this war is aggressive, it's one thing. While when the Russia proper will start getting invaded, that's a completely different thing. What do the people of Ukraine come up with to stay warm? Mostly clothes, like warm blankets, thermal clothing, wood fireplaces, stuff like that. Nothing too fancy or advanced. Ukraine needs a lot of long-range ATACMS and the HIMARS. Will they get it? I don't know. Maybe, but it doesn't seem so far. Gary Lewis is asking, does Russia have more value as a giant piece of glass? Does Russia have more value as a giant piece of glass? Okay, I'm gonna take it as should we care about Russia and what's happening inside Russia? I don't know. Probably not really. Like, I would really want Russia to be democratic and a state that would not threaten its neighbors or kill or rape. But if it's not, then we just need to give them time to essentially to boil within their own little world. And maybe at some point they will come to understanding that democracy is better than not democracy. I hope so. Maybe with a culture exchange. But so far, I don't think they're ready. And as my general position, I don't think that democracy should involve themselves closely with non-democratic powers, Erdogan included, and our Azerbaijani friends as well included. David Makwood, why is Putin still there? Because he can. Ernst Batty asks, why do so many peoples have imperialist leanings in America? We talked a little bit about imperialism in America. I think there's just not been reflection. I think America is a great power and a great nation. And I think that maybe there was not a moment to reflect on that. We were talking about the aggressive wars of enforcing democracy and that they were disastrous. But I think America still haven't had some kind of a reflection point. I think Vietnam was a lot of reflection on like what to do with some aggressive wars. And I think that Afghanistan and the situation in Afghanistan has showed that democracy and spreading democracy is not that great. But I think that some people are still not fully picking it up. But it's normal. That's how people and countries and the world evolves. We just learn very, very slowly. That's who we are. I just hope America won't invade anyone else to spread democracy. Protect democracy, yes, like Taiwan or something, but not spread it. Bob Fry, how about the scenario? The Russian army expelled from all of Ukraine, militant groups in Russia, if not Russia itself, continue to launch Iranian missiles, including ballistic missiles at Ukrainian cities. What will Ukraine do? It's an Israeli scenario. Ukraine will just have to build better anti-air equipment. They will have to militarize. So it's a thing that they can do. And at some point, Ukraine will join NATO. And at that moment, if Russia fights with NATO, that's going to be the end of it. Yeah. Joe Walderhog asks, or is it Joe? Joe, I hope it's Joe. Joe Walderhog. What can the West do to pressure Russia to return free the forced evacuated, deported? Like not forced evacuated. There is no evacuations, deportation. Deported Ukrainians that have been deported to Russia. I fixed that for you. So it's a tough question. Until regime change, nothing is going to happen because they don't acknowledge this as a crime. They are terrible. They are showing on their channels just how like they are essentially brainwashing the kids that they stole from Ukraine without their parents' consent. Like that's beyond human for me. Like seeing people like children that were taking out from their parents and then being taught on how to be Russian. That is fucked up. Sorry, but that is literally fucked up. That made me really sick in my mouth. And until there is some kind of realization in Russian society that it's not okay, I don't see any way forward. All right, couple of I finished with all the pre-stream questions. Good stuff. Scott Moore, what are your thoughts on China? Do you think they are supporting Russia? When do you think Xi could pull support? If so, I don't think they are supporting Russia. I don't think anymore. I think they made some kind of agreement with the US, and I think they are looking to get Russia under their control, but they're looking for a moment. I think they're looking to pounce. They're just trying to find a way. Think of American Trump supporters as orcs. They're brainwashed and very poorly educated. I mean, maybe like I gotta give credit. Like Trump had some good proposals, not a lot, but some of them were had. I'm not sure they were his or not. I don't support him as a person. I don't think being a complicit liar is good or should be something that we promote. But like, for example, withdrawing from Iranian nuclear deal, that was very good. Like Iranian regime is not a regime to have negotiation with. Like they should not be part of any kind of negotiations. But I think that in net negative, Trump's time as a president was more destructive to American image outside America. I am not sure, it's not for me to judge what Trump did or did not do for the American and American population, who his supporters are. People have the right to choose whoever they want if the elections allow it. That's democracy and that's how democracy works. But I feel that at least from the outside perspective in the international relationship, having Trump as president did more harm to the US than it did good. All right. Let's give it additional, what is it, 2 hours, 31 minutes. Okay, let's give it additional 10 minutes, guys. Last questions, and I'm going to wrap it up. This was a long-ass session. I hope you enjoyed it. I tried to read every single comment that was with a highlight to me, like the tagging with an @ I hope I answered most of them. Otherwise, leave it in the comment section if you're watching this in recording. Like if you watched here with the recording, whoa, holy shit, good job, 2.5 hours, amazing. But yeah, just leave your questions. I will try, again, I try to do it all the time if I stream, and I'll try to maybe answer some of these questions in some of my recorded Q&A sessions. Yeah. Hey, you're fired. Yeah, that was good. Well, the Russians use depleted uranium and munitions. I don't think so, no. I don't think so. I'm not even sure it's on the on the like supply list, like not the supply, but the, how do you say, armament list. That's why, for example, like the phosphorus munition that was claimed by Ukraine. Ukraine has claimed multiple times that Russia has been used phosphorus munitions, but that is not phosphorus munitions. That is just igniting munitions. I mean, it's not better. Well, it's not a lot better than phosphorus. It still burns people alive. It's just very clear, need to be understood that it was not phosphorus, because Russian army does not have phosphorus munitions. I was supposed to cook my dinner and then the stream started, so I was really hungry. Yeah, you should go eat. You should go eat. Thanks for watching. USA wins are massive, but our lows are not good. Overall, good impact in history. Shorter term decisions can be mistakes. Afghanistan, Iraq. Yeah. There are again, like, I like to judge the policies. Like whenever people says, like, I don't consider tribal democracy a good thing. I really believe in a democracy of ideas. I think that is a little bit more healthy than the tribal democracy, though I understand why tribal is more popular, because it's more supportive of everyone's opinions. Democracy of ideas is not as supportive to different ideas, and it requires a lot more competition, which might be not even realistic, right? So my worldview might not even be credible to any kind of war, but that's just how I see the world. I see and I look at what kind of proposals or policies one or the other party is suggesting and or executing. Stephen Churchill, thanks for all you're doing. I hope we get Russia off the Security Council soon. Yeah, I hope so as well. I hope United Nations was, and like over the government organizations, was a big disappointment for me. As a big proponent of democracy, I was really looking that the world organizations, that after the League of Nations we have learned, and the world has understood that if we want to have some kind of world police, the values and some kind of rules-based system, we need to know that there should be ability to enforce those rules, because this is directly related to my job. And for me, it's so incredibly obvious that if you have any kind of rules, you cannot just ask for that rule to be applied. You need to have controls and ability to enforce the rule execution if it's not being followed. The case of Russia is a terrible example in how our scenarios for a better world fail. How all of these people that are calling to stop the war, because let's coming back to that troll that asked, like, if I just want the world to be in peace. Well, for world to be in peace, there needs to be proper mechanisms to enforce that peace, like a peacekeepers. And if there is a specific scenario such as we have, when the country has a veto power to completely enforce and make any of these laws completely irrelevant, and then stay as a member of the Security Council, as essentially a recognized party, as a founding member of this council, which Russia is actually not, that is just making a joke of any kind of claims that we want any kind of world peace and world stability. Do you have any data about Ukrainian deaths? I don't, but we roughly can estimate that it's about 1 to 3. So Ukrainians are claiming about 80,000 Russian deaths. So I would assume that it would be around 25,000 dead Ukrainian soldiers, and about the same probably civilians, if not more. civilians, especially Mariupol. Mariupol, like whenever you hear Ukrainians produce numbers of dead civilians, they are not counting Mariupol because Mariupol is impossible to count. It was completely wiped, and there is like Mariupol might be hundreds of thousands dead, literally. So it's it's a very sad moment to kind of end this stream. So let's just rise to more positive line. The good news is that Ukraine is still winning this war, guys. So we should always remember that while Ukraine and Russia are right now in a somewhat plateau, so Russia is able to do something, Ukraine is able to do something as well. Overall, we see that dynamics is completely in Ukraine's favor. Russian army, slowly but surely, is withering down. There is a lot of it. It's completely shit, but there's a lot of it. But it's getting lower and lower. It's getting smaller and smaller. So, yeah. Can you explain? Oh, that's a good way to finish it off. Who have you Soplitsa? Okay, firstly, Soplitsa. It's actually the time for Soplitsa has been come next week. Some of our friends are coming to our house, and we're gonna probably look into Soplitsa. And to answer the last question, and I know, guys, I know Mar Garcia and the people. Thank you so much for asking. I will answer those questions maybe some later time. But the Danish counting system works very interesting. So first things, let's go over two counting things. Firstly, the grading. So whenever like I think it's in US, you have A, B, C, D, F or something. In Latvia, we have, for example, from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 10. In Ukraine, they have, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to 12 or something. But in Danish, the system goes like this. So you can get a -3 for your, like, at school. And then that means that you basically didn't participate in the exam. Then you get 0, 0, which is like you didn't pass. Then it's 0, 2. That means that you passed, but it's minimal variable score. Then it's 4, then it's 7, then it's 10, and then it's 12. So -3, like your grades are -3, 0, 0, 2, 4, 7, 10, and 12. I, for the love of God, was really trying to understand what is the logic behind any of these numbers, but they're not. And the counting system. So the counting system is particularly interesting because from 1 to 60, Danes are counting and as normal people, like normally, like from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. However, the interesting part starts at 20. So at 20, you start, for example, calling the numbers. You first call the last number and then you call the first. So like 26, you say 6 and 20. And then it's 30, you say 6 and 30. Then 6 and 40, for example. And then as you go up to the 50, that is when you start getting, because 50 in Danish is half of 3 by 20. That's how it's essentially said and pronounced. So you're like, okay, what? So you start saying essentially, so 50 is half of 3 by 20, which is not really, it's just, and then 60 is 3 by 20s. And then you say like, so 6 and 6 by 20 is 3 by 20s. Then you have 70 and then 80 is like 4 by 20 and so on. So Danes continue counting essentially in 20s further on until they get 100. And then it gets a little bit more reasonable again. To say that it's confusing and it might be like, what? Yeah, so it's very interesting. Is the correct pronunciation of Copenhagen? No, it's like it's a by a harbor. If you translate Copenhagen like just directly like what it means like by a harbor. Just joking. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. I really enjoyed the stream. It was incredibly long, and I love you all so much for taking your time. Slava Ukraini. See you next time.